Hey guys, what's going on? This is Joe Mambu from Let's Be Real Sports, and I am here with episode 96 of Let's Be Real. This episode is called Dennis the Menace, and if you don't know what it's about, it's basically we're continuing the coverage of the Last Dance documentary, which during this self-quarantine and pandemic has been very insightful and very enlightening on the 97-98 Bulls documentary. One of the things I do love about this documentary, though, it just doesn't talk about the 97-98 season. You get a little bit of background story. We got some background of Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and even Dennis Rodman himself. And episode 3 did a lot to feature a lot of Dennis Rodman and getting to know his inner workings and whatnot and what makes him tick. We get to learn a little bit about Phil Jackson's playing career with the New York Knicks, in which the Knicks, that was the only last time they won a championship. Phil Jackson was a part of those teams. And we get to learn about the originator of the triangle offense, Tex Winters. I know when we think about the triangle offense, most time we think just about Phil Jackson because he implemented with Michael Jordan, and he implemented it with Kobe Bryant and those and Shaq Lakers. What I like though, what's the documentary touch, is that Doug Collins actually had a chance to implement the triangle. Doug Collins came in the time where the Bulls was abysmal. I remember in the documentary they said that he chewed his gum into a powder, and Michael Jordan comes and gives him a cup of water and basically tells Doug, like, hey, I'm not going to let you lose your first game as head coach. And Michael Jordan proceeded to go ahead and drop 10 points to get that win in Doug Collins' first game. I know the documentary makes it seem like Doug Collins was, like the Bulls were just on an uprise with Doug Collins, and that is true. The Bulls were faring pretty well. Prior to Doug Collins getting fired, they actually lost to the Bad Boys Pistons in 1989 in Game 6. So, the Bulls was on an uprise, and they were making the right headway into becoming in that elite conference, that elite conversation of being in the Eastern Conference, but at the 1990 season, Reinsdorf, which is the owner of the Bulls at the time, I don't doubt he was the owner of the Bulls at the time, fired Doug Collins. And we all know from that 1988 season how much Doug Collins rode Jordan, right? You got to understand, Doug Collins was relatively a hire out of nowhere. He was a broadcaster once he retired from his playing days, which he played for the Philadelphia 76ers. So he was relatively young, and he wasn't the best fit on the young, impressionable minds of the Bulls players, especially Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant, who, got drafted in 1987, and, were there to make the Bulls into a prominent powerhouse. Phil Jackson did not, not Phil, but Doug Collins, he kind of predicated his offense on Jordan, and that showed in the 1988 season when he moved Jordan to point guard, right? Because it was kind of like Jordan is sorry about that. Jordan's kind of like the ultimate security blanket, right? Like, he's the ultimate security blanket. You can always go to him, and he'll always be able to get that bucket, or get the bucket, or get you the bucket that may lead to the other bucket, or do something on defense. Jordan was just the ultimate cop-out, right? It's like when somebody's playing 2K and it's like, all right, well, let's pick the 97-98 Bulls. Like, majority of the time, unless the 2K player is like really skilled, you're going to lose against that team, because that team is just a powerhouse of a team. And Doug Collins in 1988 was kind of doing that. He moved Jordan to the point guard position, which Jordan was averaging 35 points and shooting 53.5% from the field. 1988, man, was a ridiculous year for Michael Jordan, man. He was doing some amazing things, and just the accolades that he had garnered in that season was insane, right? So he goes ahead and he wins MVP, he wins All-Star MVP, he wins Defensive Player of the Year, and he goes on to win the slam dunk competition. Like, this is all, and scoring champion. So Jordan did this all in one season. This is how hard Doug Collins was riding Michael Jordan. And the thing is that the Bulls owner at the time saw that. He saw that Jordan was running through the ground. Now, I know, minute restrictions and load management is the thing in today's NBA. But, that wasn't really happening with Jordan. And, Doug Collins was a player himself, right? So players respect coaches who were players. Pretty much sure why freaking, what's his name, that guy, LeBron's old coach from Cleveland, the one that Iverson stepped over, Tyronn Lue, is the head coach, because players respect former players who are now coaches because they can see the game, and I get it. The problem with Doug Collins is that he lived a fiery lifestyle, and he had insecurities. He wanted to be the Mike Ditka of the Chicago Bulls. You got to remember the '85 Bears. They last time they won a Super Bowl, that defense was a powerhouse, and Mike Ditka was the herald of that team. And Doug Collins saw himself being in the same city, being a young, brash head coach who really had no coaching experience, who came from broadcasting, who was good looking. Listen, he was ready to make his mark on the Bulls, and he did. He did make his mark on the Bulls. From 1986 to 1989, the Bulls had steadily improved. But the owner, I think it's Jerry Reinsdorf, he knew that the writing was kind of on the wall. And if you can kind of compare it in today's situation, is the coach you could compare that to with Doug Collins, which is funny because he played for the Sixers, would be Brett Brown, and the Philadelphia 76ers right now, who was a great coach for the process. But the problem is that I don't know if he could get them playing winning basketball. And when I say them, I'm talking about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, right? Why is there not somebody developing Ben Simmons' jump shot so he could become an all-world threat? Why is Joel Embiid on the perimeter so long, taking threes or, getting the ball from the perimeter and trying to score from there when he's such an inside presence, right? These are all things that Brett Brown is kind of needs to fix, right, as being the head coach. I know you have assistants that deal with things individually, but I feel like this is the same problem that Doug Collins had. Even though they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals in Game 6 to the Pistons in 1989. I mean, the Bad Boy Pistons they weren't even playing basketball. If you ask me, they weren't playing basketball at all. Like, they talk about hard nose, hard grinding, and it's like in that documentary, I just see elbows and clothesline, like, they're like the Legion of Doom or something. And I'm thinking in my head, like, why is this even a thing, right? Why are guys fighting like this? And I get it, I get the machismo, but at the same time, like, let's just play basketball. And the Bulls, I mean, not the Bulls, but, the Detroit Pistons certainly weren't playing basketball. I don't even care if that was basketball for that time. That doesn't make any sense. It's like, you're not playing basketball. So the bad boy Pistons, I get it. They wanted, they good. They were good, but they were beating up on teams, and the league at the time was trying to put Jordan ahead of everyone else. It was, the hierarchy was Magic and Bird, of course, especially with those rivalries and them winning multiple championships. And Jordan was the new kid on the block. Like I said, Doug Collins did a hell of a job from 1986 and 1989, especially giving Jordan that freaking career year in 88. A guy was drafted in 84, fourth year in the league to win MVP. And man, he did pretty well for himself, but he couldn't get them to the finish line, and I get that. And then the thing about Doug Collins as well is that he kind of, there was a little bit of egoism with Doug Collins. He started alienating his assistants, and that's never cool, right? That's never cool to kind of alienate your assistants. He kind of berated Tex Winter, right? Tex Winter, who is the originator of the triangle offense, right? Which won Jordan and Kobe multiple championships. He was threatened by Phil Jackson, right? Phil Jackson just coming in, doing his job, being assistant to Doug Collins. And Doug Collins was really threatened. Like he said, he knew in his second year that Phil would become the head coach of the Bulls, right? Because you can see it, right? There's a report from like July of 1989 after the season was done, and it talks about how Doug Collins was once a player's coach, but then it became him berating the players, trading Charles Oakley and for Bill Cartwright, but never really using Bill Cartwright. The first round pick in Will Purdue, him not really, using Will Purdue to his potential. And it was just things that Doug Collins was doing that Jerry Reinsdorf did not care for. And this is the crazy thing, right? Like Jerry Krause is looked as the villain because essentially Jerry Krause broke up the dynasty in 97 and 98 because he didn't want to play. He did not want to pay Pippen or Jordan or Rodman, the Chicago Bulls big three, $81 million, which at that time, ridiculous amount of money, right? Now you'd be like, you got couple guys on the roster who make that, but three guys pay that amount of money in that time. It's a little bit ridiculous in 97, 98. Okay, I lost my train of thought. But so this is the thing, Doug. If the first two episodes made Jerry Krause look like a villain for breaking up the Bulls organization, that big three, it most certainly in episode 3 and 4 of The Last Dance made Doug Collins kind of look like a villain, right? Because that's the thing. It's like he's alienating coaches, his assistants. There's reports from the Chicago Tribune that so the date is July 9th, 1989. There's reports that he is giving Phil Jackson the silent treatment, and he is quick to kind of write off Phil Jackson's approach to him, right? And this is the thing, in the documentary even talks about him kind of having Tex Winter, who was one of his assistants, kind of sit away from him during games, and then during practices he's sitting on the other side and giving his info and his opinion, and so Doug Collins alienates himself. He's like, you know what, I'm not trying to run this triangle. We've been working through Jordan, and this is what we're gonna do. And Jordan, out as a competitor, listen, Jordan as a competitor, I get it. Jordan was like, there's a reason why Jordan in this documentary, he talks about loving Doug Collins, and I get it. Because Jordan is a competitor. He's the ultimate competitor. He's a fiery dude. And obviously he wants the ball in his hands all the time at the end of games. But if you didn't realize, right, Jordan, the ultimate competitor, even realizes when he was getting used too much. And after that 1988 season, and where Michael Jordan was having point guard duties, when he just won every award you could possibly win that year, he kind of axed out of the role, right? And because, listen, Jordan was superhuman, but even he needed to take a breather and take a break. And he realized that after the 88 season by asking Doug Collins to take him out of that point guard role and go back to the two guard position, right? So the owner at the time, Jerry Reinsdorf, he realizes this, and he's like, hey, man, listen, you did a wonderful job, Doug, as being the head coach for the Bulls. But your alienation, your criticism of players is becoming detrimental to the team. Doug Collins even goes after Jerry Krause's job. Crazy thing about that, if you don't know, Jerry Krause was the one who vouched for Doug Collins. And then what happened is Jerry Reinsdorf was against it because, listen, Doug didn't have much coaching experience, and he was a broadcaster, right? Jerry Krause vouches for Doug Collins, and then later Doug Collins wants to go after his job, right? So Jerry's like, hey, man, that's kind of shady. This is not what you do, especially if this man vouches for you. And you sitting in a 5-hour interview with the owner of the Chicago Bulls, and you say you're going to do all these things. You say you're not going to ride Jordan like you did, and you do. You totally do, and I get it because Jordan is that mule. Like, he will get you to there. But he can only do so much on his own, right? And that's why Scotty and Horace came in the 87 draft, and Jerry Krause did a phenomenal job of drafting those two guys. So then we get off that Doug Collins topic. We talk about the Bulls, next in line head coach, Phil Jackson. And Phil Jackson, who kind of, even though he was the top assistant, he kind of deferred to Tex Winter, who is the originator of the triangle offense. If you don't know who Tex Winter is, I kind of just said it, but he was head coach at Kansas State for a very long time. He originated the triangle offense, even consulted for the Lakers 2008-2009 championship. So Phil Jackson was always with this guy. So Phil Jackson works closely with Tex Winter, right? And this causes paranoia for Doug Collins because you can see the writing on the wall, right? Phil's philosophy is that he wants to get the ball out of Jordan's hands more, right? And make the team a full ensemble, right? Because it's like you have Jordan and you have Pippen sometimes who's been used, but he's not really being used to his best ability. And that's the thing. Scottie Pippen, when he was in Arkansas, he was, he had like guard handle, right? That's the thing. But then he grew and he became like this 6'8", 6'9" point forward, right? So when Phil working close with Tex, when Phil became the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, he worked closely with Tex Winter, and Tex Winter then became his assistant. Phil used Scottie Pippen more in that point forward role, right? Because this is the thing. The triangle gives you options, right? And you want to find smart, high quality, high IQ guys to run this offense. Phil Jackson knew, and Tex Winter knew, that we can do more as a team. We can not do more as a team, but we can accomplish more if we use the other players besides Jordan, right? Jordan's a phenomenal player, but everyone needs help. Tex and Phil knew this. So what they did was they implemented the triangle, which gives you 3 options. Or I think it was like 33 options, right? on the offense and getting other guys involved. And listen, this is the thing. Michael Jordan wasn't favorable of this offense because he's like, why does John Paxson need it? Why does Bill Cartwright need it? Why am I not getting the ball in clutch moments? But the triangle, what it does offensively and is it opens the floor, right? So people think about how the Golden State Warriors changed their offense, right? Changed the offense for the league where it's like more space movement. You stretch out the floor to like way beyond the 3-point limit where threes becomes more effective than twos. Mid-range is like kind of obsolete, not really needed. Like this is how Golden State changed the game in this current era. What Tex Winners and Phil Jackson did with that triangle offense is the same thing. Set the same precedent. It changed the league, right? What it did for defenses now is like you constantly have to look for where Jordan's at. You can't no longer zero on him at the wing because you think about it. The Bulls had, not the Bulls, but the Pistons. They had some Jordan rules, right? They had some Jordan rules, and it was simple. You know, the Jordan rules were simple. When he got to the wing, you just pushed him to the elbow, right? They would never let him go baseline, and that's the thing. When they said wouldn't let him go baseline, I always say when I'm playing basketball, the baseline is an extra defender. So I would never use the baseline because I could go out of bounds. But, Jordan's a different animal, and I play YMCA basketball, so I should just shut up. But and then when he's on the top, you make him go left. Jordan's right-handed, so his dominant hand's right. Obviously, you want to go to your dominant hand when you're playing basketball. And when he got the ball in the low post, they just trapped him on top. So the Bulls, Detroit, and then Detroit got away with a lot of fouling and punching and bullshit that they called, hard-nosed basketball, which has nothing to do with basketball. But Jerry Reinsdorf had the foresight to see, even though the Bulls had lost in 1989 in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final, that a change needed to be made. And when he made the change to Phil from Doug, it was a great improvement. Scottie Pippen improved, Horace Grant improved, and it was a good thing for the Bulls, right? So now you have the Bulls, you have the Bulls playing against the Lakers, right? And then all of a sudden, because the game plans change, it's just not the Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. You know what I mean? Like it's a full ensemble where you got John Paxson going on, and Jordan's looking at Phil like, what? But Jordan has such respect for Phil, even though he loves Doug. He has such respect for Phil. He's like, listen, all right, let's do this. And John Paxson just gets hot, super hot, right? And the Bulls end up beating the Lakers in 5 or 6. I think it was 5, but Lakers end up beating the Bulls. I'm sorry, not the Lakers, but the Bulls end up beating the Lakers in 5. And Jordan is crying and he's hugging. And, his dad is there, which was a touching moment, bro. A little eye, tear to my eye a little bit. And then he hugs Magic Johnson, you know what I'm saying? And everybody's looking at Jordan, and they're like, wow, man, like, I didn't know Jordan had this emotion. All we know Jordan for is being angry and yelling. And, Michael Jordan has all this, this ton of emotion when he wins. And, that's the end goal is mainly to win. It's mainly to win the championship. So when Jordan finally broke through, I know, it had to be everything, because before he was better than Magic and Bird, but, he didn't know how to get his teammates involved. Kind of the same things they said about Kobe Bryant, but it's a learning process. At this point in time, he's 7 years in the league. Bad Boy Pistons was a tough-nosed team, and they had Dennis Rodman. And that's actually what I want to touch on next, the relationship between Dennis Rodman and Phil Jackson. This is what makes Phil Jackson so great, right? Not only that he's willing to listen to his assistants, but Dennis Rodman, man, was a menace, as we know from his Pistons years when he used to torment Scottie and Michael Jordan, his days on San Antonio, just his wild life off the court and the antics that he used to do. The crazy thing is that Phil embraced all of it, though. That was the crazy thing, right? Like, you got this dude, Phil Jackson, who his family background is a little different from Dennis Rodman, right? But he embraced him. And, people look at Phil like a hippie or whatever. He kind of was. Like, the documentary did a lot to kind of, didn't really do a lot, but it kind of, you was kind of able to see why Phil and not Scotty, but Dennis were able to connect with one another. They both have backgrounds and experiences with the Native American philosophy. We all know Phil Jackson for his Zen philosophy that was popular through his coaching years. And Phil was just different. He wasn't really a militant. He was he was very empathetic and lenient. And this showed greatly when Scottie Pippen missed 35 games because he had to get surgery on his foot, and the Bulls were doing not pretty bad, but they weren't winning at the pace they were usually accustomed to. And listen, what's his name had to be a model citizen, right? Like, even Jordan talks about it, how Dennis never came in the room and said sorry, but Dennis asked him for a cigar, right? And he knew, and Jordan knew from then that, he was sorry and that he was going to get the shit right. And he did. And for the next game, for like a month or so, right, till Scottie came back, listen, Dennis Rodman was he was the glue for the Bulls, right? He had to take the most responsibility outside of Jordan, and he did his thing. And before Rodman went to that room, to Michael Jordan's room, the Bulls were 8-7, right? And it's crazy because the previous season, the Bulls didn't lose their seventh game until their 56th game. So the Bulls were definitely missing Scottie Pippen in that season. But Dennis Rodman got the ship right and was a stand-up citizen for the Bulls. And listen, it must have been hard on Rodman, because even Rodman talks about it in the documentary that, basketball was never really a big thing for him, right? Like, he had to find motivation to play the game. It's not like some dudes who watch Mike or this generation who watch Kobe or LeBron and they're like, yo, I'm just inspired to play basketball. Dennis Rodman, that was not the case. So, he always had to find motivation. And Phil understood this. And there was a time where Dennis Rodman goes on to Las Vegas, and, Jordan is against it. Phil's like, yo, I could give you 48 hours. Jordan's like, tells Phil, hey, Phil, if you let this guy go, he ain't coming back. You might as well just lose him. But, Jordan gives his blessing. Phil allows it. And Rodman goes for this, what was supposed to be 48 hours, but ended up being more like 88 hours. And, the crazy thing is that, they actually had to end up getting Rodman. And Carmen Electra talks about it in the documentary. But listen, once Rodman comes back, he's a model. He's a model citizen. You know, he needed that time away because what he needed to do on the court took so much out of him. And Phil understood that, right? Phil was great because he was a team builder. He wasn't alienating people. He was empathetic and he was lenient, right? And he was able to talk up to Michael. And that was the key thing, where Doug was a Michael guy and Doug would ride Michael and try to, just make Michael happy. Phil was about the team, and that showed. And they talk about it in the documentary with the relationship between him and Dennis Rodman, especially him knowing that, the tribe, the Native American tribe, they talk about the Hioka, where, the Hioka means backward walking person. I might be butchering it, but it was something along those lines. And Phil understood that. And the great thing about Phil Jackson was that he looked at players as people, right? He didn't just look at them as basketball players. That's their job. That's what they do, but that's not all there are. People are multifaceted, and you want to be able to understand those people to bring the best out of them. And that trip that Phil Jackson allowed Rodman to go on shows that. And I got a lot of respect for Phil because I always just thought it was the talent that he had. Michael, Pippen, Kobe, Shaq. But listen, it takes a lot to feed those egos. So Phil Jackson did a tremendous job, and I can't wait for episode 5 and 6 tonight. It should be amazing. It should be pretty dope. And next week I'll have some talk about that again. Episode 5 and 6. I definitely will bring you that. But listen, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Let's Be Real. This was pretty dope. I love talking about this documentary. If you want, make sure to hit us up on our Facebook page at Let's Be Real Sports Blog. You can also hit us up on YouTube at Let's Be Real Sportscast. You can check out the videos there. Make sure if you got any questions and comments, hit us up at lbrstalk@gmail.com. That is lbrstalk@gmail.com, with questions, comments, or other topics you may want us to discuss on the next episode. And that's another episode in the bag. Peace.